Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Martis with North Pacific Real Estate. And I used to live in California several years ago. And I moved to Seattle, Washington. And I wanted to talk about some of the things you can expect when moving from California to Seattle. Okay, one of the things I noticed was that there's not a lot of indoor activities for families. So I'm married and I have kids, and sometimes when the weather's not great, we want to go somewhere where the kids can have a good time and enjoy themselves, kind of exert some of that energy. But there's not a lot of indoor activities here. There are some activity fun centers or bowling or trampoline parks, but in California it seems like there's so many more options, places you can take kids and go with your family in case the weather's not great. Because even though California has a lot of sunny days, there's times when it's super hot as well. You want to go somewhere inside. I noticed there's a lot in California, even in Arizona or other states around there, right? But in Washington, there's not so many places to go. That makes it difficult when you're cooped up in the house and it's raining and it's gloomy. You just don't have as many options. So I hope that they build more of these indoor fun centers. It'll be something that I think a lot of people will enjoy, and definitely you would think they would have a lot of them because the weather is not great here all the time, but they don't. So hopefully in time they'll build more, but that is something that I noticed when I moved here. Another thing I noticed when moving from California to Seattle, Washington, was that you can't drive a lot of places nearby that are big attractions. Like for example, in California, because I'm originally from Sacramento, we could drive a couple hours. It would take us to get to Lake Tahoe. We can drive 2 hours to get to San Francisco. We could go to Santa Cruz or Monterey, which is about 3.5 hours. You could drive all the way to LA, which is 7 hours. But there's nothing like that here in Washington where you can drive a few hours to get to a really cool destination. You can go to Coeur d'Alene in Idaho, which is a few hours away, 4 to 5 hours around there. But there's not a lot of huge attractions that you can drive to. The weather doesn't usually lend itself to enjoying those areas throughout the year. And then also it's just not as developed as certain parts in California because we have a lot of mountains and wilderness here. So Seattle is going to be the main hub and places to visit within the city. That's something I noticed as well, because I do like to take day trips and go somewhere for the weekend. But in my opinion, being used to California, living there for so long, for many years, I didn't find too many of those places here. When you sell your house in Washington, you have to pay an excise tax. So it's a percentage on the sale of your home. So if you sell your house for $1 million, right, you're gonna have to pay a tax amount between 1.5% and 3.25%. That's gonna be graduated. So it depends on the price of your house, and it won't be the full percent on the amount that you sold for. There's brackets. But in California, that's not applicable. There might be some cities where in California you have to pay a percentage, an excise tax when you sell, but in most areas you don't. So that's something that is different between the two states, and something you'll notice when moving from California to Washington. Of course, one can't speak about moving from California to Washington without speaking about the weather. The weather in California is hot, sunny, warm, bright, many days of the year. But there are times in the winter where it will rain, it'll get cold in California, depending on where you live. But moving from there to here, it's going to be a change. You're gonna have to adjust. For example, the cold weather here is considered 20s, 30s, right? 40s maybe. But in California, it's cold weather is considered 60s. If we get 60-degree weather here, anywhere in the 60s, usually that's a warmer day. And it's funny because when I moved here, going on 8 years from Sacramento to the Seattle area, 70 degrees didn't seem very hot, but I'm getting more used to the weather because I'm adjusting because colder weather now, and 70 feels really hot. Whereas in California, 70 didn't feel hot at all. More 90, 95, 100 degrees felt hot. So you're gonna have to adjust to the weather. It might take a few years for you to get used to it, especially with the rain as well, because in the fall, winter and spring months, you're gonna have rain more often. It's not gonna rain every day, but it might rain for a little bit each day, but it will show on the forecast that there's several days straight of rain. Do keep in mind that it's only gonna be usually for a portion of that day, but it's still gonna be cloudy a lot. So it does have an effect on people's moods. It does on mine at times, but I just have to get through the winter, fall, spring, because spring it starts to look nicer, but it still will rain a lot. I've heard this from my father-in-law, and I didn't believe him when I first moved here because he was already living here. He said that the best weather starts July 4th, around that time frame, and then it'll go into around September. I'm like, no way, only that small portion of time? And he was right. The first year we moved here, it was nice for a lot of the year, but that's not common. So around July, beginning of July to September, October, you'll get nicer weather. And the weather is amazing when the sun does come out and it's warm, because there's just so many places to go for hiking or on the water and all of that within the city. So something you'll enjoy. But those other months, you'll have to kind of think of some things to do if you have to stay inside, work on some projects or figure some things out, because outdoors it's going to be wet, cold. But like others say, you just change your wardrobe, right? You get clothes that work better for the outdoors. And if you have better clothing, then going outside won't be as big of a deal. Okay, for me, this is a big one. For others, maybe not. But I love In-N-Out Burger. And I was sad to find out that Washington does not have an In-N-Out Burger. When I was living in California, I would go to In-N-Out Burger like twice a week and would not get sick of it. I'd get the cheeseburger, animal style. I'd usually get two cheeseburgers actually, instead of the double. I prefer it that way. 2 separate cheeseburgers, animal style, and I would not get sick of it. But they don't have In-N-Out Burger here. They have them in Oregon, but not in Washington. So I'm hoping eventually they'll bring some here, hopefully in the Seattle area, because I do miss it. When I go back home and visit family, I go 2 times a year to Sacramento. I always make sure to get me some In-N-Out, and my kids love it too, and we all like In-N-Out. So that is something that you will not find in Washington, and it's pretty sad to know, but that's the truth. That's one thing that if you do move here, you won't find In-N-Out, but there is a restaurant that's considered to be our version of In-N-Out, which is Dick's Burger. Similar type of concept, started in like the 50s or 60s, 40s, around there. And pretty low prices, cheeseburgers like $2.75. I like In-N-Out better, but it's still, I guess, a good alternative since we don't have In-N-Out Burger. Okay, here's something really cool that I noticed when I moved here, is that you don't really see billboards on the freeways. So in California, when you're driving, you'll see billboards everywhere. And it's distracting, it just doesn't look as nice when you have billboards every half mile when you drive. But here, in most parts of the state, you're not gonna see billboards. There is some on the Indian reservations, they will have billboards over there. But in most all other areas, you're not going to see billboards along the highways, which is really nice because it just allows you to enjoy the scenery, the beauty of the Northwest, and you won't have to worry about seeing all these advertisements everywhere that you drive when you're on the freeway. Okay, I'm a big basketball fan. I grew up in Sacramento, was a Sacramento Kings fan for years. I still am. We made the playoffs this year after 18 years. So I was excited to hear that, and I'm happy we got to the playoffs. But in Seattle, we don't have an NBA team. So if you're a basketball fan, even if you have a different team and you want to go see them play the local team, you're not going to have that chance because there's no NBA team here. There's football, there's baseball, there's soccer, there's hockey, but no basketball team. So hopefully in the future we will get one here. I believe that we will because it is a major city that they've already been in talks to have a new franchise here for an NBA team. But if you're a basketball fan, unfortunately, no NBA team here in Seattle. If you like new construction homes, in California, they're everywhere. They have a lot of land, it's flat, it's dry, it's easy to build on. But here in the Seattle area, it's not as common. To find new construction, because a lot of the cities here are already built out in the Seattle area, you're not gonna find a lot of new construction there. Also, because of the hills and just the weather, the topography, it is harder to find land that's suitable to build new homes on. So what's happening now is you'll have to go usually further out from the city, 30, 40 minutes, depending on the area, to find more options for new construction. There are still new construction communities being built in cities near Seattle. It's just not gonna be like in California where you'll find new communities everywhere. So that is something to consider. If you do like new construction, do keep in mind that your options here will be more limited compared to areas in California. Okay, if you're a coffee lover, you're gonna really love this. There's coffee shops everywhere here. They have these coffee shop huts. They're like tiny little huts that, of course, are enclosed, but there's like a tiny little house type setup where it's a coffee shop and you can just drive up and get some coffee. They're everywhere in the Seattle area. In California, I didn't really notice that. I didn't see any almost anywhere. But here they're very common. So if you like coffee, you won't have to drive far to find a great cup of coffee, and they're all very close by. So that's a big benefit if you're a coffee drinker. Okay, here's a big one. When I was living in California and I would file my taxes, there'd be times where I would use TurboTax, and I would do my taxes online. I would do my federal taxes, and then once I finished with my federal, I'd do my state taxes. So that was more taxes I had to pay, and also just more time that was needed for me to file my taxes for the state. Well, in Washington, there's no state income tax. Great. You don't have to pay additional tax. You don't have to file the paperwork, spend that time filing that state income tax. So that's a big benefit. It'll leave you with more money in your pocket in the end, and also just save you time when you do get to that point where you have to file taxes. Okay, here's another thing I noticed when moving from California to Seattle. The people here drive a lot slower. In California, the speed limit's 65. Cars will usually go 75, 80, 85, no problem. You go with the flow of traffic, and that's just kind of how it is there. But in Washington, everyone drives a lot slower. The speed limits on the highways are 60, some areas it's 70 when you're outside the city, but most people will drive closer to the speed limit. So if you're moving here and you're thinking that you're gonna drive 85, you're either gonna get a ticket super fast, or you're gonna just be more reckless because everyone's driving slower. So you gotta keep that in mind, that you're gonna have to slow down if you move here, because people here do drive slower compared to areas in California. All right, I hope that was helpful for you to see kind of what the differences are living in California and living here in Seattle, Washington. I also have other videos that you might be interested in on my channel, so check those out if you'd like. And if you have any questions, let me know. If you're looking to move here, I can help set you up on a search where I can get very detailed on what criteria you're looking for. I mean, as an agent, we have all kinds of options we can choose from to get you the right results and just kind of make the search a lot easier for you, and would love to help you out with that. So reach out anytime. My phone number is there on the screen. You can give me a call or text me, and I'd be happy to help you out. Thank you again for watching, and have a great day.